What up YouTube, Topaz Yates back for another review, and this one is to that Wu-Tang of Mics and Men, which is a Showtime documentary series. This joint is solid, green light all day, just based off of the fact that this is a legendary group that's giving us the origins and everything about the whole existence in the music industry and them as individuals, man. And it's so much you kind of got to see that it makes sense for it to be a documentary series. Even though this story is one that deserves to be of the feature-length films like how Straight Outta Compton was, but the same reasons why these record labels in this documentary didn't want to sign them to begin with got to be overtly the same reasons why this isn't going to ever be a feature-length film, because there's so many of them. There's so much to this story. Like, how can you literally make a project, make a full movie that'll do this justice? Like, what exactly are you going to cut out? Whose story is you going to cut out in order to cut it into something that resembles a feature-length movie? My thing is, if they made it work in the commercial rap industry for who they was and all these artists that they had, then I believe that somebody can be creative enough to make a feature-length film off of this and do it absolute justice. But this project is dope, man, because they're giving us the unfiltered beginning, middle, and to where we at now, you feel me? Like, starting at the very beginning, the actual origins of the concept of what Wu-Tang is. Because everybody should know right now that it's all based off of the old Kung Fu movies and such. But one thing I'm sure a lot of people didn't realize is that the RZA actually was in the music industry before Wu-Tang and all that, and his whole career was terrible. But yet he took that knowledge from then and he put that knowledge into the ultimate business that he crafted with him and his cousins and friends and all of that, which ultimately became Wu-Tang. And its design was a lot like, say, what you saw off the Get Down, you did, where, the RZA is a producer. He pretty much had the idea, the concept for what the individual business was going to be musically. He had the music and he had everything necessary for them to come together, and he just brought in talent and created his own crew, just like how they did on the Get Down, which makes sense because that's where they cut the teeth, like right in the midst of the golden age, quote unquote, of hip hop when it was all being developed. So they ultimately lived that life. They just didn't get put on until much later. Now, what I really liked about it was how the RZA began to break down each individual on why he enlisted them into Wu-Tang and what he hears from them whenever they spit, and why he named individuals the way that he named them based off of these Kung Fu movies and all of that, dude. And that's fire because, me personally, I've always had my favorites within Wu-Tang, which was Method Man, number one. I like Raekwon and Ghostface Killah. By far, those are my favorite acts out of the entire Wu-Tang, but by understanding what the RZA saw in everybody else, I ultimately gather a better understanding of the whole group and why everybody deemed that these people were super important, even though I feel as though certain individuals were not all that important to the success of the group. And as they introducing these individuals based off of what the RZA sees off of them, you get to see a lot of their personal lives on, okay, some individuals were like down with the 5%ers. Some individuals was out there selling drugs in order to come up and be successful in the game, in which that messed them up overall, as like they could have been successful a lot sooner, but yet the whole crack epidemic and how they was benefiting off of it, that ultimately was a double-edged blade that sent a bunch of the members to jail. How they was working crappy jobs, and these are all things that at the same time, everybody came together like, we can't do all of this forever. We need to go ahead and push through and actually do this music right now if we're going to do it. And given that everybody was straight up from the streets, they had hardly any knowledge that came along with being in the music industry and such, man, they pretty much just did what they needed to do, and they was hustling individual stores in order to sell full boxes of records to these people, man. Like how they said specifically, I'll go ahead and pay somebody to go up in the record store and ask for my record. And then a little whiles later, like a couple days or so later, walk up in there and then have somebody else come in like, oh, that's the record that we've been wanting to buy. But that became much more because these records that they had were actually out there on the streets. People were actually in demand of it, but yet nobody could find it. So whenever anybody else heard it, they legitimately was like, yo, that is that record that I heard from such and such and such. I need to buy that. Which was smart, but you know me, I'm more on the independent level as well. Like, okay, if these people right here want to buy the records, then take down their numbers and sell them joints in the streets and make all of the profit because they're right there. Don't sell it to these people that have been proven to be useless to you, that didn't want to show you no love, but they're going to be at that physical location longer than you will be at that physical location. So yeah, go ahead and sell them a box, but you should definitely have sold all of them and made all of that profit. But I guess the main thing that I really enjoyed to see was the actual business and the business mind that the RZA has behind it, because what he did with them was ultimately genius, because nobody was trying to give up a straight up creative control deal. But yet they got so hot in the streets, man, and so in demand that ultimately they did get this particular deal where the Wu-Tang was signed to one particular label. But yet every artist within the label could go out and be somewhere else. Now, the RZA was looking at it like this. I can put all of my artists in all of these different record labels, and each of these record labels will have to collaborate somewhat in order to promote these records that everybody has. So you're using the entire music industry in order to push Wu-Tang into being the biggest act that it is, as everybody's trying to get their own individual money out of it. Now, the next level of genius that came with that, instead of having everybody signed directly to Wu-Tang, which would have yielded the most money, let's not deny that, but yet he allowed everybody to go ahead and sign individual deals to other labels, of course, like I just said. But yet these individuals were not signed directly to Wu-Tang, they were signed to his production company for 50-50 joint ventures. So ultimately every record, everything that they did with these other labels, they're giving 50% back to Wu-Tang. But yet they got the money straight up from the record label, so they can't feel as though they've ever been cheated for any amount of dollars or anything like that. And to be real with you, that may be the core reason why Wu-Tang lasted as long as they did together. And they still are doing records and still doing things together now, but it's that kind of thing that made the whole group last much longer than most other groups ever actually do, you dig? On top of the actual chemistry that you see within this project right here, on how they're literally just in the studio having fun together, just spitting bars and all of that, and how they're still talking with each other on how, okay, I'm writing these rhymes and all of that, and then somebody came through and murdered the track and they just had to rip up the rhymes and start all over, and there was no personal feelings that's attached to that, and how everybody was open and honest with what they were doing, and it was all still sharpening steel and everybody trying to push forward to be the best that they can possibly be, man. I love that. I try to preach that to all of these groups and everybody that I listen to on the underground, like, you need to have this. You need that raw honesty. You need these people that got the raw skills that ultimately threaten to surpass you at all times, so it keeps you focused and doing much better. Like, there's a reason why people consider Wu-Tang as the greatest group to have ever came out and all of that, whether you like everybody or not, but ultimately it's the chemistry and how they pushed each other forward. That's what makes them great. And honestly, that's what makes this documentary series pretty dope as well, man, because you can tell they're still feeding off of each other to this day. It's an honest competition where everybody in there can hold their own, but yet everybody pushes each other to be, okay, I'm the best, I'm gonna be the best one on this track right here, dude. Even as this project shows us, it doesn't matter if you are all together on a super group, and the business was actually done rather decent, man, and you guys were super friends and all of that stuff, dude. Like, they came out talking in the very first joint saying, we super cool, we came up and all of this stuff, man, but yet we don't really talk to each other every day. We don't honestly do much with each other outside of just come to the studio and tour every so often. Overall, 10 out of 10. Definitely check out this series, dude. I hope you enjoyed the show. You can follow me at Twitter up there, and you can go to downloadpads.com that's down there to read today's article.